I promised you guys one more theory for the night, and I intend to keep that promise. A question that I've been getting almost every single video now. It gets asked on Discord, it gets asked on Twitter, it gets asked on Twitch, is what happens when we die in the Shadowlands? Now, this is actually a fairly difficult one to answer, because most people think it should be a short, single sentence answer. The problem is there seems to be differentiating circumstances. It doesn't appear as if every single person that dies within the Shadowlands suffers the exact same fate. In fact, it almost feels to me as if Blizzard is trying to retroactively solve a problem that has been created within the lore for a long time, that most players, at least people who pay attention to the lore, have been questioning for some time. Now, we're going to discuss all of that and what the future for this might actually be. But let's get into the fundamental question. What happens when we die in the Shadowlands? The first part of that is who? Are we talking about the player, or are we talking about the NPCs? Because like I said, there does appear to be a difference. When you look at NPCs, if you look at anyone that isn't the player character, when they die, we have a number of theories kind of informed by evidence, but also informed by the most recent Shadowlands afterlives, Ardenweald, for example. Once an NPC, once a normal character dies within the Shadowlands, their spirit returns to anima. It is completely dissolved. Now, we know that the Arbiter has the ability to do this. The Arbiter can turn souls into pure anima and just distribute it into the universe. So the Arbiter definitely has this ability, and it does appear as if death is sort of a finality within the Shadowlands. But remember that Ian was asked this question at BlizzCon, and Ian had a rather interesting answer. We will learn that death within the Shadowlands is not the same as death on Azeroth. Death is different. Now this really got me thinking, what is Ian talking about? Because as I said, going through the Shadowlands storyline, I very quickly realized that our deaths are almost guaranteed different when we die. But that does not appear to be the truth for NPCs, for actual hero characters or the like. They do appear to meet a final death should they die within the Shadowlands, although even that death could be considered final from a mortal standpoint, but not final from a cycle of life standpoint, where that soul would still become anima and therefore feed into the whole of the cycle. So in a way, they would still be doing their duties, even though they no longer exist. But let's move over to the player character, because this is where things actually get very interesting. When you arrive in the Shadowlands, in Oribos, you've just escaped the Maw, you run into the Fate Scribes, and they start telling you about Oribos, about the creation of Oribos. You are led, and hopefully Alex will... I'll get footage for Alex to show here, hopefully. You are led down this path outside on the outer rings of Oribos. There is a Fate Scribe that I believe is called the Hand of the Arbiter. Now this Fate Scribe has a rather interesting little dialogue with you. And he tells you about it's this obelisk that looks like a relic of the first ones. And it tells you that our souls, mortal souls, do something very interesting. So Blizzard, for the first time, tries to explain why we, whenever we die, do not go to the Shadowlands. The Fate Scribe tells us that our souls have an inexplicable connection with our world. He's specifically talking about the NPC, or the players that come from Azeroth. Somehow our souls are tethered to Azeroth. This is why when we die back in Azeroth, we don't end up in the Shadowlands. Something about our connection to Azeroth keeps us on Azeroth. so that we don't pass over into the Shadowlands. He then goes on to theorize that he thinks this connection with Azeroth may actually allow us to connect to these obelisks, these relics of the first ones. And so if we connect to these relics, it should also theoretically stop us from dying in the Shadowlands. So if something should happen to us, our souls will be tethered to the stone. So you can think of it almost as a demon whose soul is tethered to the Twisting Nether. When a demon dies, its soul returns to its original position in the Twisting Nether to be reborn there. Now, this is actually a very interesting phenomena, and something that Blizzard really does appear to be doubling down on. First off, they finally explained the one question that most of us had when Shadowlands was announced. Why when we die? Because remember, previously, we all theorized that the Shadowlands may in fact just be like a different dimension of Azeroth. We now know that's not true. We now know for a fact that's not true. The Shadowlands is a different dimension, yes, but it's not a different version of Azeroth. It is a completely different world to that of Azeroth. So why did we never go into the Shadowlands? So Blizzard explained this, but Blizzard goes one step further, and this is where my speculation of this actually comes in. In World of Warcraft Vanilla, we as the player start out as a normal foot soldier within the Horde or within the Alliance. We fight, but a lot of the lore canonically does not include us. Now, Blizzard have in the past and over the last few years gone back retroactively and changed some of that canonical lore. In, for example, the Chronicles, a lot of our great battles included words like the Champions of Azeroth was also present. Before the release of the Chronicles, almost every huge event of World of Warcraft wouldn't include the player character, because the player character was there in gameplay terms for the defeat of something, but it wasn't there canonically. Canonically, the defeat would have happened at the hands of whichever hero was there. So, for example, if you wanted to look through the lens of this, Tyrion Fordring would have been the one who slayed Arthas. We would not have been there. Now, as I said, Blizzard did go back retroactively and changed a lot of those events to include us in it. But one question have remained burning in the players' minds. What causes us to be this powerful? Why are we not just mere mortals? Why are we not just mere soldiers? In fact, we seem to be rather godlike in many ways. Some of our deeds rise to the level of godlike power. So why exactly are we as the player so special? Well, Blizzard answers this with a small nugget that almost no one realizes until it's pointed out. Why are we tethered to Azeroth? Why are we the only mortals in the entire universe that when we die do not go to the Shadowlands? What is this tethering to Azeroth? I theorize that Azeroth chose us at birth. We are not soldiers of the Horde. We are not soldiers of the Alliance. We are the army of Azeroth. We are her children. When we were born, when your character player or your player character was born, Azeroth linked her soul to yours. And thus you became greater than what you were meant to be. More powerful than what you should have been, because you now have the power of a titan flowing through you. I also don't think that it's the heart of Azeroth that is communicating with the relic of the first one. I think it is us. There's something very interesting that happens when you die in the Shadowlands, and believe me, I've tasted the death mechanics in the Shadowlands substantially and really thoroughly. I have died a lot in the Shadowlands. If you don't believe me, just come to Twitch. You'll see it. We're dead more often than we're alive. But I have tasted the death mechanics in the Shadowlands, and there's something very interesting that happens when you die. You spawn at one of these obelisks, and the obelisk almost opens as you spawn, as if it's opening to throw your spirit back out before it closes again, and you run to your body. So you have truly tethered yourself to this relic of the first ones. You have almost become part of the Shadowlands in a way. So much like we do on Azeroth, we are now also part of the Shadowlands. So there is something very peculiar and something very specific about the mortal souls of Azeroth. They're not necessarily as mortal as we will later believe. At least not in the prism, or viewed through the prism of normal mortality. Azeroth has a claim to us, and in many ways I kind of want to know why exactly Azeroth hasn't woken up yet, and I wonder sometimes if this might not have something to do with it. Remember, I've said this before, Azeroth does appear to be awake right now. She's giving orders to Magni, she's sort of theorizing about how to save herself. Azeroth is doing all sorts of crazy things. Azeroth, just FYI, was recently stabbed with a sword. I don't know if you guys missed that, but you know, it's a small thing that happened, but there is a sort of sword sticking out of fucking Azeroth, right? The problem I have with this is I don't care how deep of a sleeper you are. If I stab you with a sword, do you not wake up? Like, I would argue that if there was ever something that would wake you up, it's the stabbing of a sword that would really fucking do it, right? If you're gonna stab me with a sword, I'm perfectly sure I'm not gonna be okay with that, and I'm gonna wake up. She doesn't wake up. What if she doesn't wake up because she doesn't need to? Now, we've theorized that maybe she can't wake up, and we theorized that this might have something to do with the prison line from Sylvanas. But also, what if she just doesn't need to? We are her champions. As long as she is connected to us, as long as she doesn't wake up, our power fuels her and her power fuels us. So the stronger we get, the stronger she gets. And if I'm correct, if my speculation is correct, I don't think Azeroth is the good Titan that the Titans think she is. So to your question, what happens when we die in the Shadowlands? Nothing. At least nothing for us. We just reborn. We just respawn and we keep going. For other NPCs, it appears to be a rather permanent death. Once you die in the Shadowlands, there is no more safety net. There is no soul stream to pick you up and take you back to the Arbiter to be replaced. Your soul simply becomes part of the building blocks of the universe, to be used in whichever way the Eternal One sees fit. So, at least from where I stand, death in the Shadowlands to all of our favorite characters is most likely permanent death. But I do have a small theory on this. I'm not saying I'm correct in this, but what if souls that die, and this is a question rather than a theory, what if the souls that die in the Shadowlands actually end up in the Maw? I've shown you the footage, and I'll record it so that Addicts can put it up here as well. I've shown you the footage of all of these different realms being sucked into the Maw, as if the Maw is feeding on all of these realms. So what if when you die in the Shadowlands, your soul gets sucked into the Maw? where it should have been in the first place. And thus Sylvanas says, in the end, death claims us all. That's my theory. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. I would love to hear what you guys think on that. But personally, a lot of this isn't theory. A lot of this is real. It's true. This is literally what they tell you. But hopefully that answers your question as to, what happens when you die in the Shadowlands.